Now let's head to Canberra, where the government is digesting some of that bad news in the latest Newspoll. For more, our political reporter Matthew Doran joins us from Parliament House. Good morning, Matthew. So the Newspoll results are not a good sign for the government this morning.
Good morning, Del. Well, as many politicians will tell you, there is only one poll that matters, and that is a federal election. But these numbers are no doubt going to be of some interest here in Parliament House and in the leaders' camps, Malcolm Turnbull and Bill Shorten's camps, as they're currently away from Canberra and travelling around the country. If we take a look at the figures, the coalition still leads the way on the primary vote. It's getting 41% of the support, but that is down 2% there. Labor up 2% to 36%, and the Greens fairly steady, only down 1% at 11. Others, including independents, up 1%. But it's when we look at the two-party preferred stakes, and Labor has edged in front of the coalition for the first time since Malcolm Turnbull became Prime Minister. They're up 2% to 51%, while the coalition is down 2% to 49%. But something that I guess the coalition will be able to take some heart from is that Malcolm Turnbull is still streets ahead of Bill Shorten as the better or preferred Prime Minister, but he has slipped slightly, down 4% to 48%, whereas Bill Shorten is up 6% to 27%, and the uncommitted there down 2% to 25%. Now these polls figures of course come after last week's failed attempt or failed proposal to get the states to levy their own income tax, and to throw another spanner in the works. Yesterday we saw the former Defence Minister Kevin Andrews have to backtrack on some of his comments in a local newspaper, where he said that he'd be willing to challenge Malcolm Turnbull for the leadership of the Liberal Party. He says he was taken out of context. Now, the Industry Minister Christopher Pyne was on the ABC's Q&A program last night. He admitted last week was a bit of a messy week, but the differences between the coalition and Labor are still incredibly strong, and that voters know that the coalition is the right party to lead them and lead the country.
Polls come and go, and that reflects the current situation. But after an election campaign, on election day, I firmly believe that with our policies around things like the National Innovation Science Agenda, the Defence Industry Policy Statement, the Defence White Paper, Senate voting reform, competition law reform, media ownership reform, there'll be a budget in May. Quite clearly, we have the team and the plan to create jobs and growth.
Christopher Pyne, they're clearly defending the government against those results in the polls. But Christopher Pyne has also made some comments yesterday about submarines. Is a decision likely on where those submarines could be built?
Well, Mr Pyne says that a decision on the submarine contract could be made ahead of a poll. Now, of course, this is of particular interest to Christopher Pyne, being a South Australian MP, and a lot of the fallout from any submarine contract will be centred in South Australia, because the federal government has promised to keep as much of the $50 billion project for these 12 submarines, as much of that work in South Australia, considering that the shipbuilding yards out at Osborne near Port Adelaide are already building the air warfare destroyers contract, and there's been a lot of talk about the so-called Valley of Death in between projects and the loss of the skilled workforce there should the submarine project not be handed to South Australia. So all eyes will be on where this contract goes. 3 bidders, the Japanese, the French and the Germans, trying to build this fleet of 12 new submarines, and the government has copped a bit of criticism over the length of time it's taken to make this decision through their so-called competitive evaluation process. The Defence Minister Marise Pyne says it's just a process to get the best possible result for Australia and for Australian taxpayers. However, Labor has definitely laid attack to that proposal, saying that a decision needs to be made, and it needs to be made now to give those workers some sense of certainty.
We'll certainly be looking forward to that decision as or when it comes out. Matthew Doran, thanks for your time this morning.